Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast.
Thanks, Simon. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Thank you so much for coming on the show and having a chat to us.
My pleasure. I love the work you do, and it's really important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Jeff, I know we're going to have a bit of a chat about your company Synet that you started and ultimately exited from, and obviously we'll chat a little bit about what you're doing today, but maybe I could get you to give us a bit of your background and kind of what led to you getting into Synet and building that business.
Well, I'm one of those guys that's a high school graduate that wanted nothing to do with college. So my father actually had been in the cable television business since 1951. So I grew up around linemen and tower workers and field engineers, and to me, they were like cowboys. So when I grew up, if I grew up, I wanted to be a cowboy, right? So I got out of high school, and that's what I did. I became a lineman, and then I became a tower worker, and then I became a field engineer. And when I was about 23, I found myself overseeing the operations and building of a pretty large system in northern Jersey. That was in, when was that? That was probably like 79, 80. And I had an opportunity to join one of the contractors working for me, and he had a really small apartment wiring company. And I learned engineering and design and construction, all that type of stuff. So I said, "Hey, how about we come together and we'll form this company?" He liked that idea. I left my job, which was good to become an entrepreneur, and we had success in that for about 7 years. We built it to 4 offices in 4 states. We were in Dallas, Texas, North Jersey, Chesapeake, Virginia, and Rhode Island. And
Wow.
what happened was that business crashed. And it was because we knew what we were doing, but we didn't know how to run a business that became as complex as that one did.
Sure.
When you
Can
have
I
4
ask how big
offices,
it was by the time it got to that point?
we had 108 employees, and we were doing about 5 million in 1987 money.
Yeah,
So
wow.
reasonable size, a lot of heavy equipment. We did a lot of underground construction. So we had earth saws and big dump trucks and, a lot of
Yeah.
people. And it was very labor intensive, heavy overhead. And what we didn't realize was, you have 4 offices in 4 states. That's like having 4 companies. And
Yes.
it just collapsed on us. So on the other side of that, I could either get a job, I was known in the industry, or I just had this thing that said, I'm not done yet. And I had a lot of debt from the other company. And I managed to have $17,000 that I had squirreled away. And I looked at that and I said, I want to make a go at another company. And the reason for that was I knew that if I started a business, if I took a job, I'd probably never start another business. I was married. I had a 2-year-old. I had another one on the way, and I just bought a new house in April before the crash happened in June. Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I knew, I would just stay on the career path. But then I realized, if I start another company and that fails, I can always I can always take a job. So
Yep.
that choice allowed me to keep both choices alive. And
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can I pick on that a bit? And maybe you just answered my question, but I want to get back to when you first left your job and started that first company, because I'm always fascinated with what makes an entrepreneur, or makes somebody go down this path. You said your father worked in cable TV, but was he employed? Did he have his own company, or what was
no,
was there anybody entrepreneurial in your family? Is where I'm going with that.
Not really. I mean, he had worked his way up through companies, and then he
Yep.
started a small contracting company when I was a senior in high school, and he wanted me. I'm sorry, about 2 years out, and he wanted me to join it, and I didn't want to join it because it was construction, and I was on the engineering path at that point. So I said no, thank you. And if you would have asked me the morning of the day that I decided to go into business, if I would ever go into business myself, I would have told you unequivocally no. There's no way. It was just,
Yeah.
it was inconceivable to me. But what happened was, I was 24, 25. I was a young buck. I was moving my way up through this organization. It was growing quickly. And I didn't have the diplomacy skills, the political skills, or the patience to deal with corporate. So I had a conversation with my boss one day, and he wanted me, I had 40 people working for me at that point. Most of them I trained, and we were a real band of brothers, and they wanted to change a benefit package, and he wanted me to portray it in a way that wasn't true, because he didn't want the guys to get upset. And I said, I tell the truth to my guys. They love working here. It's not going to. And he tried to muscle me to misrepresent what we were doing, and I said I wouldn't do it. So at one point, I looked at him and I said, "Pardon my French." I said, "This sucks. I'm not doing it."
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and said, "What'd you say?" And I knew that was my moment. I could either dial it back, or I could just. And I said, "No, you heard me. This sucks. I'm not doing it." And I got up and. His office was about 3 blocks away from mine. And as I was walking from that office to mine, I said, I got to go. I think I can run a company better than he can. Then I should call my own bluff. Yeah. So that's what I did. I went in, I sat, and I made a phone call to a guy who was struggling. And I said, I don't want to come in as an employee. I don't have any money. I mean, I was so broke. My friends didn't have money, right? And I said, but I know a lot of people and I know a lot of stuff. So he was doing like 2,000 a week, maybe, apartment wiring. And so he brought me in 50% owner, because his accountant said, George, your company isn't worth anything anyway, so you may as well give him half. And we had a pretty good run. We ended up I came up with an idea for another company to pull an underground construction company in. And that's the one we built that ultimately crashed. But it was just, I knew I couldn't make it in that other spot and have my integrity. So I called my own bluff. So out I went.
Critical crossroad in your journey there about, your own ethics, your own morals, your own, interesting that, had you not been faced with that situation, as you said, you might have ended up being in corporate forever. But fortunately, in a lot of ways, I think, I think you probably can add a lot more value doing what you're doing today and having run companies than just being a number in somebody else's business. So
yeah, well, when I told my father that I was going into business for myself, he said, "Well, Jeff, if you're going to work for a jerk, it may as well be yourself." And, and I was like, hey, "Thanks, Dad. I think." He was my hero and mentor in many, many ways. But yeah, I'll tell you, I could have made more money working in corporate, because I ended up getting into technology. The second company I started called Synet, I knew I wanted to get out of the cable television industry because that was getting really competitive. Barriers to entry were nothing and prices were going way down. And I saw there was an opportunity to get into local area networking. In fact, in 1986, I was hired to do the first local area network pilot project at Harvard University. And I went in and I was, I looked at this and it completely intimidated me. And the guy wanted me to put a bid on it. So I gave him a price 3 times higher I could have made in cable television. And he took it. And I said, that's the business I got to get in. So it took me 2 years to get out of cable television and into that. And Synet became one of the premier integrators in New England for quite a while.
Yeah, nice. So talk to me a little bit about those early years of Synet and you adapting to this new industry, new space. How big was the company? How quickly did it grow? What do those early years look like?
Well, you started with 17,000 and a mountain of debt, right? And it was really, really tough. I mean, I ran numbers on how long I could survive with my little $17,000. And I went to all of my cable TV clients. I had about 17 of them in the other company that were in the region. And I told them I was going out of business, but the other company was still going to do some cable. So if they would hire me to do that, I'd finish up the projects. And all but one retained me. So I at least had a little bit of work, but then that quickly dried up. And I struggled with cash flow. Oh, man, I couldn't break $1 million for 9 years. The first year I got up to, in a year and a half, I got up to 750,000 in revenue, which was pretty good. And then very long story, I won't get into it, but the state of Rhode Island licensed my industry out of business and gave it to the electricians.
All
So
right.
yeah, I ended up getting very involved in suing the state and then becoming a lobbyist to go up and get the law changed. And
Wow.
I spent so much time up at the State House getting that law repealed that my revenues went from 700,000 down to 415,000 the next year, and it almost choked me out.
Yeah, wow.
And then it just took me years. We ended up being successful, but with that, and took me years to get back up to where I could even break $1 million.
And thank you for sharing that. There's a couple of really big points here that jump out to me. And I know you and I were chatting a little bit offline about people preparing for sale and stuff like that. But it's funny, when I talk to people about the value of their company and the importance of timing, even if they're going to exit, and how timing can have such a massive impact on value. When you start to break down, I think there's always sort of almost three major segments I tell people to look at. The first is the big macro environment. This is what's going on in the world. We're all really small boats in a really large ocean. So when the wave comes, doesn't matter how good you think your boat is, you will rise and fall based on the economic environment and the macros that are sort of circulating around that. And what you just touched on there, a lot of people will know a typical pest analysis, political, environmental, socio-cultural, technological, that sort of stuff. Political risk, man. Big change in the law. You're in business and doing well and growing one day, and the next day you're struggling or potentially don't even have a business.
Right.
And so I keep sort of saying to people, and for those listening, after the macro, you start to look at the actual industry and sector you're in, and then your own organization. But I keep getting asked this question: when is the best time to sell my company? And there are two elements to it. I always say to people, one is when there's more buyers than there are sellers. In other words, when the market values your business at more than what you value it at, that's a good time to sell, right? Because you're probably not going to get that dynamic all the time. But part of that is actually that big macro wave, right? And when the times are up and it's good, you might not see that cycle for another 10 years. So, sometimes people aren't necessarily keen to exit, but if the timing is actually right for other reasons, it's worth considering.
Right. And, the challenge with that a lot of times is, this is my baby. This is my identity. This is my, I can't imagine, what else would I do if it wasn't this? And that's one of the biggest challenges for sellers, is to be able to envision that next stage of their life that excites them so much that they're willing to move out from that other space. It's a transformation, and transformation is a lot harder than change.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a great point, and I think it speaks to business owners needing to understand not just the purpose of their company, why their company exists, other than just making a profit, but also what is the purpose of that company for you as the business owner. What is it meant to fulfill as a part of your life? And, what are you getting out of it? And what are the goals around that business? We talk a lot about exit planning here around here. And, not everybody's going to start a new startup with an exit plan. Oh, I'm going to build this to X, on day one, I know that I will exit in 5 years at this level. It's too kind of far off or unreal for people to wrap their arms around it. But at some point on the journey, I think business owners need to start getting really clear as to what they want out of this journey we call business and this particular asset that they own, so that they can recognize opportunities like that and I guess think about it more clearly as to whether they want to execute on those opportunities as they arise.
That really leads to my story. That's just the perfect segue, because I was, let's see, it was 2005. And so I started it in 87, broke $1 million, I think probably about in 2005 or 6, but I had lost $100,000 that year because I got too much work in. and I had to do the work at overtime rates, and that almost choked you out. You can go under from too much work or too little work or bad work or
Yeah.
whatever. There's a lot of things that'll kill you out there, right? So
Yeah.
I managed to dig out of that hole. I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a 2-year journey I'm going to be just to break even again. So, but that's what you do. And if you love what you do and you like being the captain of your own ship, well, that's part of it, right?
Yep.
And then probably around, in 2000, I had an opportunity to really look to make it big. Technology was booming. We were in a really cool spot. And I worked for about a year with a group in New York we were looking to get about $50 million of venture capital and to do a smart building company. And so I was down there and I was spearheading that and trying to get that to happen with a bunch of other people who were really smart and knew that venture world. And after a year, realized, well, the bubble burst. So all the money in Wall Street went, that was 2000. So I kind of came back and I was looking saying, I had this vision of taking this company and now I'm back doing, 3-4 million a year. And in order for me to do that for the year, I was going down just about every week for the week. So I had to prepare my management team to be able to run the company without me while I was down there. So that year really allowed us to figure out, okay, this is what you do. And I had to give up some things and, I had to empower people and trust people. And my ego was really in the way. And I really had to work through some really gnarly stuff on that. And then, I came back, the company was running and like, where do I fit? And I didn't fit anywhere. And that caused problems because, I would go to my one partner. The people who were my partners were people I hired. And they had done such a great job that I gave one 25% of the company and another 7% of the company because they came in, we were doing $1 million a year. And within 2 years, we went to 3 million. And within another 2 years, we went to 5. And that was largely because of what we could do together. And it was really a good mix. So I said, look, you came in, I had $1 million company. I now have a $5 million company. I'm cutting you in because you deserve it and locks you in. I don't want
totally.
you going anywhere, right? So, but we really ended up having some real conflicts because, I'd be like, well, let me come in and do projects. Nope. That was Steve's area. Well, let me come in and have some more input on finance. No, that was Joyce's area. And after a while, it got contentious. And what was once, my best friends, we became adversaries. And I became resentful because it's like, look, I built this thing from nothing. I dragged this, you get that whole story it's true, but it's self-absorbed, And so I was, our relationship was dropping. I was bored. I'm an entrepreneur. I need the next thing in my industry. It kind of flatlined a little bit. It's still going well, but I remember I was sitting in a meeting and I was listening to monthly reports. Excuse me, and I heard myself say it before I thought it, and it was, I have to leave, and I just said, I got to get out of here. And my partners looked at me and they said, "What? You have another meeting?" And I said, "No, I have to get out of here." And they said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I don't even know if I know what I'm talking about, but I just know I can't stay here anymore." So I excused myself from the meeting because, in that moment, I spoke a truth to myself that I was avoiding, but my skin was crawling in that meeting. And I started thinking about, okay, why did I start the company? I started the company because I wanted to build a company. Okay, so what's the next level question? Why did you want to build a company and not just build somebody else's? Well, I ultimately wanted to really be happy with what I was doing. I wanted to have a lot of independence in what I was doing, and I started because I wanted to be happy. Okay, so the business is now not making you happy. So in that moment, another moment of truth, like back when I was 25 years old, walking from one office to the other, it's like, wait a minute, if you built the business to make you happy, if that's why you're a business owner and you're not happy, and I know your identity, everybody knows you as president of Synet, I had a national reputation in that industry, but I had my parking spot. I was king of my drum and all that type of stuff. And I was like, but I'm not happy. So what do I want? Do I want the bling? Do I want the ego feed, or do I want happiness? And I got back to my partners and I said, yeah, I want to sell. Let's start talking about that. And then that started what was about a year and a half journey.
Okay. Yep.
I immediately, pretty quickly, I turned the operation of the company over to them because I didn't want to be in there. And there are certain rules that I had, but I had to go launch my other entity, which I didn't know what it was going to be. And then, it's like, well, I can't be a president of a telecommunications company again. I can't do this. And I was 30 years in the same industry. So like, I'm thinking to myself, you know what, buddy, you kind of screwed yourself here. I mean, you don't have a college degree. Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, oh my gosh.
I don't think a college degree matters at that point of your life, though. You've proven your success and your value.
When you're really doubting yourself, you bring up every rock you can and bash yourself in the head with it.
Indeed.
You fool. My dad had a great saying, and it was, he said, Jeff, sometimes you set your hair on fire and put it out with a hammer. It's like, you just cause your own stuff sometimes, man. And I was like, yeah, I know. But what I did was I was on a spiritual path, a consciousness path, still am.
Yeah.
And I remembered something a teacher once told me, and it said, don't live your life based upon questions of fear. Live your life based upon questions of love. So I realized I was looking at my whole thing from a scarcity position instead of abundance. And I went, okay, well, I'm looking at all those things I can't do. What would I love to do? I mean, like, let's face it, you're sick of the telecommunications industry. You've been in it for your whole career. What would you love to do? And immediately it came, I would love to help other people build their businesses easier than I built mine. And I would love to serve that community because I resonate with them. I've had the IRS shut me down. I've had them threaten to take my house. I've had cash flow nightmares. I've resolved all that type of stuff. And most importantly, I've learned how to maintain the mindset of the entrepreneur to be able to go through the most challenging places and to be able to keep when it's most critically important and the stakes are the highest, to keep yourself cool. Okay, we're going to see how this works out. So that's what I did. I launched, and the way we sold the company was kind of unique. I didn't bring in a broker. We had looked at getting involved in a roll-up a couple of times, and we decided not to do that. And I said to my partners, I said, look, this isn't rocket science. Okay. I mean, this is math. Okay.
Yep.
Biggest challenge we're going to have is the relationship and the personal dynamics. And at the time we were not really good friends. We were having issues. So that added additional stress to it. Now we're looking at, this is the business I'm going to sell, and it's a business they're going to keep. They didn't want to impoverish it.
Yep.
And, I needed enough to keep me going. So, I said, look, guys, all of us are going to have to really be careful that we don't de-evolve into being so selfish that we hurt everybody, because we have an obligation to everyone who works here. And for a construction company, we had incredible retention. There are people that work in there 15 years. There are people that started their careers and built through there. And I said, look, we may be fighting amongst ourselves, but we have to have a higher goal that we're aligned upon. And that is to be respectful of everybody who's given us their blood, sweat, and tears and are depending upon us to make sure the mothership keeps going.
It's a good point. I'm always saying in transactions to both buyer and seller, the number one rule here is don't damage the asset. Right. And that asset, by the way, is made up of not just an entity with a brand and some revenue streams. There's a lot of people involved in here that actually make this asset what it is. So, don't damage it just because we're beating our chest and letting our egos get in the way of things. It's, It's never black and white. There's 1,000 shades of grey. We're going to have to navigate here to find the right mix of solutions to get the right outcome. And so let me pick on that sort of process for you a little bit, if I could. So you'd given 25% to one partner and 7% to another. Was that so? It was part of their package. They didn't actually have to buy that off you. Is that right? So you're sitting there. So 32% of the company is now owned by the others. You're talking about starting to sell to them. First of all, how did you come up with a number? Like, what was the valuation of the business based on?
Well, about 3 years prior to that, we came close to doing roll-ups twice. So we had gone through a lot of that, and we had a sense for what it was. But, it was probably about a year later. And what we did was we said, okay, look, let's do it this way. What's really important in these things is that you anticipate the really gnarly spots before you get to them. And you say, when we hit this gnarly spot, how are we going to deal with that? So that way, when everybody's relatively sane, you make your agreements and then you move forward. So what we did was we said, all right, here's what we'll do. We will have an appraiser come in.
Yep.
And that appraiser is going to make the appraisal. And we had an accountant that we really liked, the guy out of State Street up in Boston, super good. And we all trusted him. We said, we're going to get the appraiser, and then we're going to have Don come in, and whatever Don says, can we agree to go with it?
Yep. So Don's independent.
Yep.
Everybody knows of him. Everybody trusts him.
He likes us
so
all.
There's a sense that he's unbiased.
Yep.
I do, just to pick up on your previous point, though, the fact that you'd had other people approach you in the past and talk to you about roll-ups and things like that, and obviously valuation is important because it's, people ask me about valuation, and I say, look, I'm always a big believer in what's the fair market value, right? It's what the market is willing to pay for your business, and the best gauge of that is actually what other businesses are selling for, right? Because they're real transactions where people have parted with money and actually got a deal done. So it is a very good indicator. The danger of it, of course, is that people from the very distant outside see another company in their industry sell and, make the assumption that they're all the same, which we know that's not the case. But definitely that market-based feedback with an unbiased advisor to pull apart the detail of your company sounds like a very good mix to me to come up with what is probably a fair number.
Right. And go ahead.
Oh yeah, just to pick on that. So did Don use a particular methodology? Like, we see a lot of valuations done on a multiple of EBITDA. Sometimes it's a multiple of revenue. Sometimes it's a multiple of a weighted average, or, there's lots of different little ways to slice and dice that. But do you recall what the sort of methodology was that he used?
It was a multiple of EBITDA. And
right.
Yep. And I think our multiplier was like 4.5 or something like that. And in my industry, there wasn't a lot of selling and transactions going on with that because the industry was hot. It was still kind of young. And so there wasn't a whole lot out there. There was some talk that, we had one guy come in and say, and think we were like a software company and wanted to do a multiplier of 12 or something. And that would have been great for me, but I looked at these guys and I went, look, I want you to be fair with me, so I'm going to be fair with you.
Yep.
And that's the thing, you really need to be able to look just outside of what is your immediate want and what you think you deserve. I mean, this is a business transaction. There's a lot of people involved in it. And, at the end of the day, you're going to come out of that and you're going to look back on that at some point in time. And, it's like I tell my son when he was really having a big decision he had to make. And I said, look, whatever decision you make it from the standpoint that when you look back on this from a year from now, you will be proud of the man that you were in that moment, regardless of what the outcome is.
It's an interesting one. Talked about, value and being happy with what you're getting out of it, and I guess being realistic in a lot of ways. But one little exercise I like to suggest to some business owners, and I talk to a lot of people who are, some are ready to sell and they want to get out now, but others are further back on the journey. It could be, hey, Simon, I want to get out in maybe 2-3 years. Some are even longer, 5, even 10 years. And because I've seen so many business owners bounce around with their emotions and get confused about what they really want, particularly when they're in the heat of the moment of, trying to negotiate. So if you're 2 or 3 years out from exiting, one thing I would suggest to people is think about a number today that if somebody walked in and said, I'd like to buy your business. And okay, so you're in the mindset of I'm going to sell my company, regardless of where it's at and whether the number makes sense. What's a number that you would feel really happy about today, that you would feel, hey, not only does that help me in my life, but it would make me feel proud and it would make me feel like a success and that I've done an amazing job here. And let's just say, for the example, that number might be 5 million. I'm just picking a random number here, but write that 5 million or write that number down on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope and stick it in the top drawer of your desk somewhere. And the one thing I'd suggest is, because if you get 2, 3, 5 years down the track and you are having one of those moments where you've been approached and you're churning away and the gears are grinding about what you should be doing and all the rest of it, and there'll be so many variables in that can throw you off or make you feel confused or frustrated or stressed, pull that envelope out and remind yourself about how you felt back in the day, because, sometimes I think we just need to be anchored more in the reality of how we felt about the world when we weren't under pressure. And it can just really help people get clear on, what, hey, these guys are offering me $6 million. 2 years ago, I would have been dancing over the moon for 5 million. Like, actually, this is an enormous win. And if anything over 5 million is probably a great number. So, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't damage my relationships and friends, and just so I can push for that little bit more. It's just a bit of a reality check that life is not always about the number, and it's not always about that moment in time.
And, that opportunity that comes along may be the only opportunity that comes along. And the next one comes in at 3 because the market crash or something. So,
absolutely. And there we are, back with those big macros again, right? The wave has already gone and you've missed your opportunity.
I mean, if you love what you're doing and you're in it and just keep on chugging along. But if the bloom's kind of coming off the rose a little bit and you're wondering and it's turning into like a job or a grind, that's an indication. And most of the moves I've made in my life wasn't because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I couldn't do anymore.
Yes. But sometimes it's easier to define, right? It's easier to define what you don't like than it is what you're actually looking for. And to your point about, if you're happy, keep chugging along. I would recommend to every business owner, to every person for that matter, even if you're working for someone else, if you're happy in your role and you're enjoying it, try to take a little bit of time and introspection to think about, what exactly is it about the role you're playing do you love? Because I think a lot of people get caught up in the fact that I'm the president and I've got this role and aren't I important and I've got the car park and I've got this or that, or I'm the, there's the shiny things that people think that are the goal or the attractive part of it. But when they break it down, and I had to do this myself, I realized actually what it is I really love talking to people. I love engaging. I love feeling like I'm adding value to someone's life and I'm making a difference. I like to be my own boss. I like to feel like I have freedom and in the role that I play, even though I have to work with others to achieve things. Like, getting really clear on the elements in your job that actually give you the happiness, as opposed to this bland package of it's this thing and it comes with a title, because that thing is hard to replicate. But if you leave your business or your job, the tasks and the things that made you happy may actually be quite easy to replicate somewhere else.
I've always felt, well, not always, but, 15 years into it, I probably started getting it, that, entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful journeys of self-discovery you can go on. because you're up against it. You've got everything on the line. You're under stress. Oftentimes nobody can help you but you. And who am I under pressure? And what do I do? And how do I go through that? And man, it can be lonely. It's like Navy SEAL training. There's a lot of people are executives and, thanks for your service, right? A lot of people are in the Navy. Thank you for your service. But then there are those people who want to go out and build their own thing. Those are special ops women and men. And they're wired. Their journey is going to be more difficult. It's also going to be incredibly rewarding. And I'll tell you, if you know how to start a business, you know how to survive. There's a lot of people that are very good at what they do, better at what they do than I could ever be. But if they didn't have a job, if they didn't have someone paying them, they wouldn't know how to go out and make their own money. And that's not a diss. That's just a vulnerability. We're entrepreneurs, we know how to go out and at least have the basics to start up another one. And we don't have that mental block that says we don't know how, so maybe we can't. Like that's the thing that freezes people. And it's a tough journey, but I'm 66. I've been self-employed for 40 years. And I look back and I have been able to make a lot of decisions about how I spend my time, where I take my career, what I do, what I don't do, what I volunteer for. And self-determination has really been important. It's been the biggest gift it's given me.
Yeah, and that's fabulous. You remind me of an expression that one of my mentors shared with me. We were heading into COVID. The world had changed. We were faced with challenges like everybody. And I remember saying to him that, I'm a fairly sort of positive outlook kind of person, but I said, okay, well, look, it's all right. We'll make the change, and what they say, it's character building, right? We talk about our challenges. And my friend and mentor turned around to me and said, I don't actually agree with that, Simon. I don't think that difficult times are character building. He said, I believe they're character revealing, because the person that is going to come out this other side is actually already inside you. It's just that sometimes it needs to be exposed to the right kind of pressure to reveal the diamond that's inside. And so, and I thought that it was such an insightful comment that, you can't teach some people, and this is back to your point, there are some people who will never start a business and they never should start a business. They're very good perhaps at what they do, but they will work better in an environment where somebody else is taking that risk and having to manage those kind of decisions that business owners have to make. But just this exposure to challenges reveals deeply who you are.
And that's such an empowering viewpoint. You already have it. You just have to discover it. It's like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, if you're familiar with that. And it's the basis.
I'm not, no.
It's phenomenal. It's the basis of all myths. Joseph Campbell was an anthropologist who studied myths all over the world, and he saw all these patterns. And Bill Moyers did a phenomenal series of interviews with him. You can see them on YouTube. They're amazing. But, so take a look at The Wizard of Oz, okay? The hero's myth is basically a person starts out a normal person. Everything's going along. All of a sudden, a major disruption comes in, puts them in a different place in their life. Yeah. And they're in there and they're met with, lions and tigers and bears and flying monkeys and, witches. They don't know how they're going to get through any of it. And at the end of it, they find out that they got through everything they already had what they already needed. In fact, the good witch tells her at the very end, you had what you needed to get home all along. He had to go through those trials and tribulations to find it. The lion realized he had his courage. The Tin Man realized he had the heart. The Scarecrow had the brain, right? He just didn't know it. Yeah. And that's what the entrepreneurial journey is. It's a hero's journey to go in and challenge yourself. And it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, now that you've explained it, the principles of what Joseph Campbell there talks about is something we've talked a lot about it's, every good story, every movie practically follows the same formula, right? Like there's a protagonist, they have some kind of massive challenge in their life that disrupts the norm. Typically a guide comes along to give them the support. They go through an enormously challenging experience, and at the end there is transformation. And, it's funny, though, how often, is it life replicates art, art replicates life? But, I think most people out there, particularly the, business owners are probably listening to this, can relate to that, right? Like in your deepest, darkest times, there's usually somebody in your world or in your life that happens to almost serendipitously pop up and be able to give you a little piece of advice or a little bit of support that helps you get over that hump and get moving again.
And that determination where you just look and you say, you know what, I win. And if I don't win, I'm going down winning.
Yeah.
I had stage 4 cancer in 2016. And
wow.
The entrepreneur, the lessons I learned is from stress management and staying calm under pressure and staying focused as an entrepreneur were such a lifesaver for me, literally, going through that process, because I never melted down. And my attitude at the time was, I win. And until my last breath is gone, I'm still at the table and I can still get more chips. I can still win. And that's it. And that's the entrepreneur's mindset. And the things that we learn about ourselves are just so important for us. And then also, if we have children or there's people around us, they get to see that, they can be an entrepreneur too.
Yeah.
That is possible for them. I never thought it was possible for me. And just through chance, it ended up, here I am 40 years later and I'm still doing it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool.
Business, it's just, it's awesome.
I love that you mentioned the kids there. Like I've got 2 boys that are 14 and almost 16. And, I keep talking to them about, you can be the master of your own domain. You can do your own thing. You can cut your own path. And, it's funny, they already have little mini businesses where they go and power wash people's driveways, and they have done all sorts of things. My one son has absolutely no fear about door knocking people and asking for the business. And the other son is just really meticulous about doing the job. And it's like, wow, you guys actually make a really good team. And but it's funny, their own friends have said to them, they're all getting jobs now, right? Why wouldn't you just get a job and then people just pay you to turn up and you're there and you're whatever? And it's like, but because I'd spreadsheeted with my son about how he would work his numbers on the power washing, he goes, yeah, but you're getting paid $11 an hour to turn up and be bossed around. Do you like your job? He goes, no, it sucks. I hate it. It's like really hot and sweaty in the kitchen, and it's, and the guy is a manager, he's a bit of a doofus. And he goes, well, my son goes, well, I go out and I actually chat to homeowners, and they're so thankful that I'm coming to do this work. They're lovely, and they often give me biscuits and offer me a cup of tea or a drink, and they're so lovely. And he goes, and by the time I'm finished my work, he goes, I get paid $30 an hour. Right. Now, it might not be as regular as what you get, but geez, I enjoy doing it, and I love making the money. And so it was funny to hear my son explain this to somebody else, and I thought, man, it's happening already, and you're only 14.
And your grandkids will be exposed to that thinking, and on and on. I mean, you help somebody stay in business, or you start a business. You in many cases have changed the ripples of generations going forward. It's really
that's cool. That's a very cool way of thinking of it.
Yeah, they at least know they have the option. In fact,
indeed.
My daughter became a massage therapist. And she was a massage therapist for about, 4 or 5 years, then had an opportunity to go out and try to start a small little thing. And, today she has her own massage therapy place, and she's got 2 women working with her. And I said, Allison, cool. Never thought you'd be an entrepreneur. And she's like, I still don't think I am. I'm like, but you are. But she had to take the risks. Yeah. She had to. So, she's seen me do it. And obviously, because I've done it, I can help her. And, we just keep that going. And it's...
absolutely. And shake off the imposter syndrome, right? Because you can do it, and you are deserving, and you are worthy. So, Jeff, cognizant of time here, but obviously, you've given us a little insight as to what you do today already, in terms of helping business owners. And, I think your story speaks volumes to the experience that you bring to that. And are there typical kind of businesses that you help, or business people, or size of companies, or regions? Like who are your kind of ideal customers that you can add the most value to?
Yeah, my passion is the small to medium-sized business. So, I can work individually with somebody very small in a coaching, but for me to go in, I do a combination of helping to build the management team and move the organization so that it can deal with the new management structures. Otherwise, if
Cool.
you get management, if you get your management team to be able to unleash the collective genius of the people, you can't have an organization that chokes it out. So I work with small to medium-sized companies. My sweet spot is probably like 25, and I've done up to 650, right?
Wow.
So,
Cool.
but I like owner operated because that's my tribe. I relate to them.
Yeah.
And I don't do sales. I don't do marketing. I don't do finance. I understand that enough to be dangerous, but I'm a leadership development and organizational design guy. And
Nice.
that's when I can roll up my sleeves and come in and help understand what your issues are. And I teach as I go, because my obligation is not just to help you build your company, but to help you understand and learn how to build your company so you don't need me at some point.
Yeah.
And so, my engagements go anywhere from 3 months to 2.5, 3 years. And
Yep.
then when they end, they call me back when they have something cool going on. But
Yeah.
that's
Nice.
it. Small
Nice.
to medium size, and really companies that know that are frustrated with, I know we can do better, but I can't figure out why we aren't. So I go in, I troubleshoot, I show, and I work together with them and help them build the type of company they want.
That's cool. Very cool. I love it. And clearly we get along so well because clearly we're part of the same tribe here. It's exactly the same sort of people we love to help too. So, Jeff, how do people get in contact with you? It's what's the easiest way if they want to reach out?
I've got a really cool website. It's jeffreydeckman.com. It is filled with content. In my heart, I'm a teacher. If I could give all this stuff away for free, I would. So there's a lot of content on there. I've got a YouTube channel you can find on there. I've done quite a few podcasts that talk about the type of work I do. That's all on
Cool.
the site. Or you could just email me at jeffrey@jeffreydeckman.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're going to put those links in there. I noticed, so obviously you and I are also connected on LinkedIn as well. So perhaps another channel that people can reach out to or reach out on. So that's awesome. We'll put all those links in the notes. So if you've enjoyed hearing Jeff's story and you'd like to chat to him more, you'll be able to reach out to him quite easily. Jeff, if I could ask you one final question just to wrap up, can I ask you what is your personal definition of success?
Experiencing inner peace and trying to help other people experience theirs. Because if I can
Nice.
get that,
Nice.
I've got a lot of things in the right space.
I love that you've been able to break down something so complex into actually just a simple idea. It's, I guess it's probably the more simple ideas that are actually the hardest ones to achieve, right? It's, how do you take the complex and make it simple? So I love it. Jeff, thanks so much for sharing. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. It's been great chatting with you.
Oh, it's been awesome chatting with you. I'm glad to have gotten to know you. And I love the work you're doing. You're coming to people at a pivotal time in their life, and you're shepherding them through it well. So that should be respected. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate the very kind words. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And we'll see you again on the next episode.